This week, the end of Marissa Alexander's 3 years in prison meant for this mother of three a time of new beginnings, including yesterday, when what for many parents is the most mundane of moments was so much sweeter for Alexander because it was the first time she'd ever been able to do this, going to school to pick up her 4-year-old daughter, who was just a baby when Alexander went to jail, allowed under the conditions of her plea agreement, which permit her to leave home for certain approved appointments and employment. And it was a family reunion of sorts that brought Alexander together with all of her children, including her teenage twin boys. Marissa, you talk about wanting to do something that might be in the field of law, helping folks. I'm wondering what kind of parenting you've been able to do during your years that you have been in prison, and whether or not part of what you might do is actually advocate for parents to be able to keep that relationship.
Well, you know, you have to spend the extra time and effort to really connect with the kids. And for one thing, my kids were in a transition of going to teenage years, so it was a little bit difficult because, you know, that's the time when they're into their electronics and your parents are not that as cool. So when I left, we were in the bed together and, you know, sleeping together. And then when I came back, it was everybody was on their cell phones and on laptops. But, you know, one of the things that I did, I continued to write them. I did call them. I didn't push them to come and visit. If they had things they wanted to do, you know, I wanted to make sure that they had some normalcy. But when I got back home, I realized just how much they missed me. My teenage daughter had, you know, because I have twins and they're boy and girl twins, and my teenage daughter had all of my clothes that she was wearing while I was gone, just my sleeping clothes, because she wanted to feel some type of closeness to me. So those are the things that I did, make sure I wrote, I called, and allowed for them to have for life and not be tied down because I was.
Marissa, hold on for me 1 second, because I need to ask a question that I don't want to ask to you, but Joy, I do want to ask to you, because to hear her talk, to hear Marissa Alexander talking that way about her children, I keep thinking, and no one was shot, no one was injured. Can you please riff for a moment on Angela Corey, the prosecutor, who thought that the most just thing to do was to take this woman, who clearly cares about the welfare of her children in such a mature and, I mean, what you want every parent to do, away from her children for these years?
Yeah, this was truly one of the strangest cases that I have to say I've ever covered, because I know of my share of prosecutors personally that I've dealt with in Florida. I've really never seen a prosecutor more passionate about a single case, or more passionate about wanting us, people, you, me, people in the media, to change the narrative to make Marissa Alexander the villain. They really angry that the media was not accepting the notion that Rico Gray, and there were 2 children that were in the house too. She was actually charged with 3 counts because 2 of his children were in the home at the time. And so setting those 2, I mean, obviously those are minor children, but that Rico Gray really was the victim here. And that, of course, is the state's case. That's the case that they were out and charged to make. But Prosecutor Corey was very, very passionate that Rico Gray was the victim, and really not, I don't think, necessarily accepting even his own admissions of having battered multiple women as evidence that he might be the villain in the case. And it really did surprise me, I have to say, in the conversations I had with her, just how passionately she believed in Rico Gray as the victim. And I think that colored the passion with which she pursued the case, and in a way that I have not seen before.
So Faith, then help us out. For folks who are advocates, who are activists around this, it really did get wrapped up, in part because Angela Corey is the same prosecutor on the George Zimmerman case. It got wrapped up in this. But is the thing we should be pressing against here stand your ground? Is the thing that we should be pressing against here the mandatory minimums? What's the thing?
Well, I think what changed the narrative really in the case was the helpful ruling that the judge made under a lot of stress here to let in the domestic violence of Rico against all his prior partners, whether Marissa Alexander knew about that violence or not. That kind of legal ruling, that kind of evidentiary law is very helpful to have in the future. But in terms of your question, I think the real issue is mandatory minimums. This kind of alleged crime should not be met for a first-time offender with a 20-year mandatory minimum. Much more important than stand your ground.
Marissa, I want to give you the final word here. What do we need to know now that you're home? What's the thing we can do as a community, as people, to be most supportive of you going forward?
Well, just continue to, be educated, support other people that have things. I mean, all the way around, when you have an incident where, people's lives change, and sometimes they end in fatality, people are still hurting. And they're impacted in some kind of way. So I think that we can all rally around, supporting those people, and then trying to identify ways that we can, prevent it and stop, being so reactive to things after the fact. I think it could be more work put into, things in the forefront, things that we could be doing prior to getting to such a tragic end. And that's everyone, domestic violence or any type of violence or any type of activity, criminal wise. But as a community, we can educate ourselves on the laws, the lawmakers, because we can get out there and vote, and then we can decide at that point what these guys, if they know about the things that we need, and then educate ourselves, and then vote in that, in the way that supports the views that we have as a community. So those things are going to be huge going forward in the future, because there's a lot of changes I think can take place, and we as a community have the power to influence that.
Marissa Alexander, in Jacksonville, Florida, in your own voice, I know you can't see yourself, but just you're transcendent. You being here this morning means so much. Thank you so much for having a conversation with us. And here in New York, thank you to Faith Gay. Joy is going to stick around a little bit. Up next, political trial balloon pops, plus TV now in color, from the rise of empire to the return of scandal. We're going to talk about that.